It's like we got stranded on a planet, and now we're having a conversation.
Okay. Well, let's start. So this is a review of a video from Tom Campbell. The title of the video is "What Happens When We Die." So how I learned from Tom Campbell. Well, he wrote his book, the trilogy, in 2003, so around 20 years ago. It's called My Big Toe, and it's also called MBT for My Big Toe. And toe is a theory of everything. So how did I find him? In 2009, I did a search on YouTube with the term consciousness. And I found a video of him from 2008. It was a workshop in London, and it was a very good video. So after watching the video, I was shocked. It was like out of the ordinary, that video. Then I decided to go and buy the book. So I bought the book. It was the trilogy, so it's like 3 books in one. And I took some time to read the book, and I can say I think it was the best book I read so far. It was so out of the ordinary. And the big message was like, we live in a virtual reality. Like realities are virtual. And I related to the movie The Matrix. I remember at that time, the movie The Matrix was launched in end of, 1999. But it was still fresh in memory. So basically, the model is that everything is consciousness, everything is information, and the processing and experiencing of information. And I was shocked when I realized that, on one side you have souls. So it's the spiritual, the soul. Mm-hmm. But then the book talks about information and about computing, about computers. And okay, if you ask yourself, can a soul have feelings? Of course, we have feelings. But can a computer have feelings? And that was like what I was thinking at the time, I remember. But then thinking, well, feelings are experiences of information. Even pain is information. It's information because it has some roots on some events, on certain things. And I wonder if actually you can delete a folder with the name pain. If you have too much pain, I say, oh, let me send it to the recycle bin.
So would you say that perhaps the appeal of his theories is because it's sort of aligned with our love of computers and the different analogies that he used with computing?
Yes, because since he says reality is information, in my case at least, I'm gonna talk about everybody. I was trying to put the other things into it. The feelings, how do they fit in an information environment? But then after a while, I said, well, it makes sense. And I was then thinking about dreams, lucid dreams. And it makes sense because dreams also feel like virtual realities. They feel like simulations. Another thing I want to mention now that people, you have an idea of what is Tom about, is I used Bing AI to get information about the video. And in Microsoft Edge, you can click the icon of Bing on the upper right corner, and then you can ask any questions about the web page you're in. In the case that you put a web page with a YouTube video, then you can ask questions about the content of the video. Mm-hmm. And then I ask to give me a summary of the video. And this is what Bing gave. Pretty good information. First, for example, says the video is a Q&A session with Tom Campbell, a physicist and author of the book My Big Toe, Theory of Everything. Sounds good. Tom explains his view of what happens after we die based on his experience and research on consciousness and reality. Sounds good. Tom says that after we die, we enter a transition virtual reality where we can adjust to the change and prepare for our next incarnation. Is good. I think it's also good when you remember the experiences, the NDEs that people had, that they go to these transitions, and being virtual makes sense to me. Then Tom here says, Tom says that our avatar, which is our physical body and personality, is discarded after death, but our free will awareness unit, which is our individual consciousness, remains intact. So here, in this point, being is not that accurate.
Yeah.
And maybe this is a good opportunity for me to clarify what are the differences between an avatar, a free will awareness unit, as Tom uses that term, and what is an individuated unit of consciousness. Okay. Here, being says individual, but it is close enough, individuated. Well, basically, the free will awareness unit is like the subset of the soul that has awareness in this experience. So it is the awareness we have. Yeah. So the free will awareness unit is a subset of the IUOC, individuated unit of consciousness. The avatar. So sometimes people confuse the term avatar. Avatar is like our bodies.
Okay.
Because in the movie, the movie Avatar, what is the avatar there? And I think is the big body, that alien that is super tall. That is the avatar. The human is actually acting like the free will awareness unit. I mean, his awareness is the free will awareness unit.
But the physical body is part of the virtual reality game, we'll call it.
Right.
And so that's an avatar. Our physical bodies, even though they're very complicated, they need to be born, they need to go through all these complicated things to even exist. They're still just an avatar within the VR, within the virtual reality.
Right.
Is that right?
Right. So everybody would agree that the avatar is gone when you die. The avatar, doesn't function anymore. So then, so that's the only inaccurate thing I found in the Bing AI summary. Then the last 2 points says, Tom says that our free will awareness unit is part of a larger system. And this can be a bit confusing because Tom uses the term LCS as a larger consciousness system. And the individuated unit of consciousness is the soul that contains the higher self and the free will awareness unit. So it's so the IUOC, the individuated unit of consciousness, is a subset of the LCS.
Yes.
And the last point says, Tom says that we have a choice of either reincarnate or explore other virtual realities. And our purpose is to evolve and grow our consciousness by learning from our experiences. And here, it seems that Bing takes information that is not exactly on this video. It takes information from other sources about.
Yeah. So from my understanding, Bing AI is actually GPT-4 in disguise. So it has a database of information ending in 2021, which it then mingles with either searches and regular Bing search, or in this case, with the transcript of the video. And so that last point then could be just from its knowledge base of 2021 and before.
Right. And our purpose is to evolve and grow our consciousness by learning from our experiences. I have a phrase that I use often that it says, experience is the ultimate teacher, because you can read stuff, but when you experience something, it's not the same, right? It's not the same to read about tennis and play a tennis match.
The question I always have, though, is, do I want to experience all these different hardships? I mean, it seems a bit rough. Maybe I would want maybe a little bit of sugarcoating when I go into a difficult situation. But it seems like when we come here, we just get hit with pretty extreme feelings, sensations.
Yeah, this reality is a real challenge. It's
Yeah.
a challenge in general. Well, the good thing also about Bing AI that I like is that it has some options of other questions to ask at the bottom. For example, it says answer from the web instead. Then it says, what is the book My Big Toe about?
Mm-hmm.
Another one, it says, how does Tom Campbell define consciousness? Mm-hmm. And the last one, it says, is there any scientific evidence to support his claims? So
okay.
These are good options to explore. We're not going to go through this in this video, but I mean, these tools can help you. I mean, find out more information.
It's a good learning tool for people to, with any subject.
Yes. Well, after this Bing AI summary, talking about the avatar and the free will awareness unit, I said the other day, I'm not my body, because people identify with their bodies. I say, I'm not my body. The body is a vehicle. I am the driver. So I feel like I'm driving this body. It's not like it's me.
I have a recurring dream that I'm in the back seat of my vehicle trying to drive it. So maybe that's a good analogy.
Sometimes you might feel somebody drive this for me. I don't know where to go. Okay. Tom says about a transition reality, and that often the soul, after dying, the soul has fears, anxiety, and then they're going to try to calm you down, to either remove the fears and anxiety or lower it down considerably.
Yeah.
And then he mentions that, and I think he mentioned this before, that it might not be our relatives that passed away before us to welcome us, that it might be the system, or some other people refer as the LCS as source. Source is a term that I like to use. It's more general, understood in the consciousness environment. So like source might play a big role. So I compare this like arriving to an airport in the future. Because, I mean, there might be two scenarios that, okay, maybe your daughter is there, your wife or ex-wife or relatives or friends are welcoming you at the airport, right? That's one way. Another way is like you arrive at the airport and some computer, some robot come there and say, welcome to the airport. I want you to feel good. They take you to some room. I mean, maybe they take you later on to some Uber or some self-driven transportation.
Yeah. So Tom Campbell tries to convey the notion that there's more or less some sort of almost automated system that's doing sort of the greeting and may fool you into believing that it's your mother or somebody that's previously passed on. So that's his view, is that we're getting more of robots or temporary constructs rather than real people. That's the way he's saying it, I think, right?
Yeah, I think that all of this is possible. All the options are there. An information system is capable of doing all these things. But the thing is that there are souls there, as he uses the term IUOCs. They can be willing to be there. They might, offer, oh, I want to be there.
Yeah.
So I think both options are in the table.
Yeah, I mean, so when I sometimes I have experiences where I run into my past life personalities. You know, I think that they're basically operating, there through what Tom Campbell would call an IOC. And I think the same thing might be true for greeting, that, essentially the soul will put on a face and say, hey, I'm your mother, but it's the soul of your mother. So, in some ways it really doesn't matter. I don't think it's impersonal. I mean, it's still your mother. It's just your mother from a higher vibration. That's my thought.
Yeah, also I think you'll agree with me that souls can choose their appearance. So it's typical that souls like to present themselves younger than at the time they die. So I mean, it's about their choice. Someone or taller or shorter or whatever they want. So another thing is mentioned in the video is that some people reincarnate in groups. I think I'm okay with that, and there is other evidence, other sources for this, like Michael Newton, I think.
Yeah, this is pretty generally well accepted.
In the media, it's also mentioned that in some cases it's like a jump in, jump out, and other cases are more planning. Is more planning involved.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I wouldn't, I don't, I think he was saying something like the jump in, jump out was like for a younger soul, because they're just kind of like hopping and ready to go on to the next experience. Whereas maybe like a little bit older soul is a little bit more pensive and wants to get things right before they come back. But I don't know. I don't know if there's any particular, rule as to how long you stay. I do want to say that years ago, when there were fewer incarnations, maybe there was a little bit more time in between lifetimes. But now, with all the bodies that need to be filled, I feel like we end up jumping in and out pretty quickly in the afterlife just because of the demand here.
Yeah, another thing I relate to this is, for example, the education of a kid versus somebody that goes to college. The kid, usually the parents choose the school for the kid, but then you might choose your college. So
that's a good point. That's a good point. It's how involved are we in our own planning, and how much are we willing to look back at the difficult choices we made during previous lives and think about those choices versus it's like, I'll just do it again, just forget about it. I don't want to think about it.
Oh, I want to mention that later on I'm going to add, most probably in the description, how to find the videos that we are reviewing here. So now keep going with this review. He says about the reintegration. When we die, after a while, there's a period of time that it might be a slow process, or I don't know how fast it would be. I think it's fine. I don't see any problem with this, any reintegration with your higher self. And I don't think there is any evidence in the contrary. I cannot think of any source of information that says it's not like this.
That, yeah, at some point we don't reintegrate.
Then the quality, I mean, you add to the quality, this experience adds to the previous quality of your soul from maybe also previous lives. The thing is that in my case, I think that this addition of the life experience on Earth is that it might be dynamic, it might be in real time. Because, for example, sometimes I feel like I'm wasting my time here, that I could learn faster on the other side and non-physical. And I say, well, I try my best here, but I like talk to my higher self and say, Yeah, but you should do your part of this. And I'm actually feeling some vibrations here when I'm thinking this. Yeah, it's like I'm getting connected right now.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah,
I think, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, I was going to say that, we often think of our soul, listening and to our soul talking to us, but you're not afraid to kind of like talk back and say, hey, maybe you can help me out here. And with this learning process.
Yeah, because I felt like after saying, yeah, go ahead, I want you to do some research, real good research. And like I had a conversation with you before, is maybe you should go and find out who the CIO is there. Find
Yeah.
out who's the CIO and ask him questions, or ask some good developers there. What is going on?
Yeah, there's definitely a sense that on the one hand, there's all these sources that we'll have a chance to review and talk about, over the next, videos. But there's certain things that just seem to not be available to us, at least not readily. More technical questions that we have because we're computer programmers and scientists.
Yeah, like I said earlier, that people usually, when they talk about their experiences, they say, I knew everything. I got knowledge of everything, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's the same access. It's like there are different clearance levels. You're
Well, even if they did get access to everything, they forgot it all. So, and of course, everybody seems to remember certain key things like how to, listening to your heart, stuff like that. But you and I would like to be able to delve deeper into the mechanics of how the system works, why the system exists, all these different questions.
Yes. Well, then what else? Well, then he mentions like we can see it as a partition or a virtual server. I think the virtual server analogy is better than the partition, because partition is mainly the hard disk. So the virtual server in the way that you have kind of like the same CPU, even though I'm adding my opinions here, not exactly what Tom says. That I think we are restricted because we don't have maybe the same processing speed when we think here than our higher self. So I think the analogy of a virtual server is good if you add some software that restricts
Yeah,
reality.
Yeah, there seems to be evidence. I know from from some other sources that our soul mind works, just at a much higher CPU frequency or number of processing cores. It seems like we may have like 1 or 2 processing cores here, but we could have hundreds there. So it seems like we're operating definitely at a disadvantage while we're physically incarnate.
Another thing that's not mentioned too much in the video is about the life review, but it might be because he mentions the planification, and it might be part of the planification, and also because the video is 10 minutes, so it's like you cannot say a lot about the life review in 10 minutes. But actually the life review is mentioned so much by other people experiencing the, and by hypnosis and other ways of getting information that it happens often.
Yeah.
And
it could happen in different ways at different times during the between lives experience. So there's a lot of, I wouldn't say ambiguity, but a lot of variability in how it might be experienced by someone crossing over.
Yes. Another thing that he mentions, I think this is kind of like the end of the review itself. We can later on talk more about it. He mentions that we can access databases. Databases are the same thing as other people know it as Akashic records. And also from NDE experiencers, they say that not only in the life review, not only you see your life, but you see the effect you cause on other people's lives. And you can see it from the perspective of other souls, how they felt how you affected others. So basically, I think that you can use this database, let's say, as virtual reality training ground. And for example, I would like to, for example, experience what Elon Musk experienced in managing so many companies. I mean, what would be a day of him? How he can manage all the maybe the possible stress he can go through. I mean, but this rocket exploded, and what do I do now? The investors and all this thing.
Yeah.
It's, or being a woman, because I've been a man in this life.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely something to be said that when we incarnate, we seem to, an idea came to me as you were saying this, that it's like there's a bunch of GoPros on us when we incarnate. And so we're not just getting, we're getting the experience as we're seeing it through our eyes. We're getting the experience of what's going on in our brain. We're getting the experience of our heart. It's almost like there's multiple monitors hooked up to us that are all recording and are all stored in some database somewhere, whether it be within our individuated unit of consciousness or somewhere even externally that, like you said, you can go and access Elon Musk's database, not just your own, to experience different life events.
Yeah, I think I think you get the feeling of this power. I mean, all the tools that are available there.
Yes.
And Seth talks about this, the entity that was channeled by Jane Roberts, that you can go through. I think he calls them probability, reality. I mean,
yeah, something like that, probable realities or something like that.
Probable, yeah, I think it was probable realities. I think it's about the same thing. It's like going through these virtual reality tools and go with what if scenarios, seeing different perspectives.
Yeah, and one of the things I'm curious about all that is to what extent when you have that headset on and you're experiencing different realities. By the way, that's more than just say reading about Elon Musk's experience. You can actually be Elon Musk.
No, yeah, exactly. I wasn't talking about.
So the question is how much do you lose yourself within those little simulations? I mean, are you still like aware kind of that you're in this experience, or do you buy into it so much that you suddenly feel like you're him for that moment in time?
Actually, related to that, I think I heard somebody saying something that it made sense to me, that you can also choose to temporarily remove some memories from yourself to experience something. I mean, in this life, the usual rule is that you get your memories wiped out before being born. And I think that option can be used in the non-physical temporarily. Let's say, well, I want to go in a session and I want to remove certain memories of myself for 2 hours. I mean, I don't know about the time in the non-physical, but I mean, certain amount of time that it can take you to experience something. I think you can play with that, play with the.
Yeah, and you wonder also like how long, if I, let's say, spent time experiencing 20 years of somebody's life, in between lives, is that 20 years of physical time? Is it no time so that I could just do all these things, and then when I'm finished studying, it's like the world hasn't even moved forward and I can jump into my next life? There's a lot of weird questions that we don't have.
Yeah,
we don't know.
In my case, in regarding time, I agree with Tom Campbell that even though it might appear that there's no time there, I think there has to be time, because also thinking about when I do video editing, you can say that time is relating one video frame with the next one.
Yeah.
And then you can run the video at different speeds, right? But what is in common? You have one frame, and then the next frame, and then the next frame.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and also because I think it's like you suddenly have a computer that is so fast that nothing takes time. Like you want to run, you want to do a render of 3D rendering, that in a super good computer with the best GPU might take you an hour, and you can do it in nanoseconds maybe there. And then
Yeah.
it's like if you get the feeling that it was instantaneous.
Yeah,
But
it's also interesting. I mean, imagine it kind of reminds me of studying tapes before playing a football game. You know, you're studying tapes of the other team and trying to understand all their strategies, and then you take it with you. The question I have is, you can have all this experience, say, in between lives, or even your souls could be having as we speak. The question is like, how much do we actually bring with us when we come here? Because it seems like we get almost like a little bit of a memory wipe when we come here, and very, very limited access to that bigger database when we're here, unless we train our abilities to access that information. And so it's almost like you could have all these wonderful experiences there, but then come here and mess up because you had no recollection of the thing that you reviewed for eons of time.
I also think it might be tricky. I mean, the way of this wipeout, because I also heard that some people practice before coming to a life. Like, for example, who knows, maybe I was programming before being born here. And maybe that helped me in my programming or doing some math. And who knows, maybe Elon Musk was being trained before coming here, or some presidents were trained about.
I feel like there are certain subjects where a lot of things just came very easy to me. It's almost like I got like a booster pack, and it worked until a certain point in high school or college, where it's like then that it's like I no longer had that information anymore. And the way I see it is, let's say I was a mathematician in many different lifetimes before, but my mathematics only went up to a certain level. And then in this lifetime, since math has evolved quite a bit since then, all that new maths between my past life as a mathematician and now is all new stuff to my soul. And so I have to basically learn it from scratch. And so I go from it coming really easy to me to being a lot more difficult, because now I actually have to learn it, or my soul learns it for the first time.
Yeah, true. There are a lot of questions, because I imagine the tools there are way better than whatever we can think of here.
Yeah.
And I think we can learn so much there.
Well, and that's one of our big questions is, what is the benefit of learning here? I mean, what is like you say, I want to see the pie charts and the graphs and the Excel spreadsheets.
That's, I think those were good talks that we were talking about.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Show me the numbers, show me the statistics, because it's like comparing. You talk to the first doctor that comes to you. I say, so what should I take? Oh, take this, and I go and trust him and take those pills. But then instead of doing that, I say, well, let me go to Google, best doctor here, specialists in the area. I mean, you can do some research, go to several doctors, ask, show me numbers. What are the chances I have of, maybe you have surgery, and what are the chances of surgery going well or bad, risk here, there. So I would like somebody to show me numbers. I mean, for example, okay, what happens if I reincarnate again? So what are the chances I have of getting something very good out of it? And then not only that, give me some numbers, probabilities, right? They cannot know for certain, but some chances. But also, so what other alternatives do I have? What other things can I try? And also maybe get numbers for the alternatives.
Yeah. How is it improving the quality of my soul? Yeah, I like to joke that if I decide to start, making a bunch of documentation about everything that I've learned in this lifetime, will I know to access that documentation in the next lifetime? Will I come back to this video, for example, and go, oh, look, that's me. I better learn from me. Or are we just basically relearning each time, how things are?
Maybe when you're about to get the Wi-Fi, you take some little memory chip somewhere.
That's right. That's right. Well, some people talk about in their near-death experience about how they almost like contracted to have the near-death experience so that they came to an agreement with their guide that that we'll give you sort of a partial awareness of what's going on here to make life a little less painful, a little less real, so to speak, to give you some perspective. I certainly have benefited since I started doing my exploration of the afterlife. It certainly has taken a lot of the anxiety away from me, and I would hope that other people get that too, when they start exploring these things, to know that, well, it's not, certain things aren't going to happen, we'll say.
Well, you already know, but I'm going to tell the people. I often watch videos on YouTube about NDE from different channels. And then YouTube is actually good of giving you suggestions what to watch next. They already know what I look for. One thing that I don't think is that typical is that I think it was a woman saying that since she was a girl, she had guides all the time, telling them, helping her. So I think that's not the most typical case, but it's there. It's like somebody that has several coaches from the beginning when they start training for some sport.
Yeah, I think some souls do things differently. I think there's probably a variety of possibilities. It's also possible that maybe certain genetics makes you more perceptive of the spirit world, and therefore your guides can access you, whereas other genetics might have more filters, and so you're not as able to get as good a connection. So spirits have to shout to get your attention. Also, it's possible, one idea I have is that this free will awareness unit that Tom Campbell talks about, he talks about being sort of cleaned out after each lifetime. But my theory is that it's actually not cleaned out completely. And that gets into, we can talk about retrievals and stuff like that. And the more dirty it is, or the more it's filled up with past life fragments, memories, and stuff like that, I think the more difficult it is for the soul to communicate with the free will awareness unit and the avatar while they're here. So I think that gets clogged up a bit, and a good mechanic or working on it, through meditation to clear out those fragments, I think will then lead to a better connection. At least that's my hypothesis.
Yeah, you reminded me of something that I heard in many cases, that kind of cleaning or depuration, like adjustments, because they they can see. I think they can, like they see like colors of the soul, and saying, well, here there's a problem, and they might remove certain things. They are not necessary, and maybe, who knows? Maybe they ask you, you don't mind removing this part of your experience? It's going to be better for you, and you might agree, and then.
Well. Yeah, so my theory is that, and when I talk to some of these fragments, or when I've talked to them in the past, they're holding on for dear life because they think that leaving this unit means that they're going to be extinguished. But really all they're doing is just moving into a higher vibration where they'll be at home, so to speak, within the soul. And so it's about cajoling them to move to a place where they can continue to observe me living my life, but they're sort of out of my hair, and they kind of, the vehicle is really only meant for one unit. And so when they're standing in the right place, they can still intervene and talk with me and whatever, but they're not like blocking the controls, so to speak.
Also, maybe, I don't know if you want to mention that that it's possible that you can have another avatar at the moment, and part of your soul is handling that avatar too.
Yeah, this is something that Michael Newton talks about. The advantage is you get twice as much experience in the same amount of physical time. The disadvantage is that you're subdividing your soul's energy where if you call the free will awareness unit part of your soul, it's you have to take 30% of your soul for one physical lifetime, 30% for another, and then maybe I guess 40% left back home or whatever. And this is a really interesting subject because I don't know. I mean, I think some people have claimed that they've met other aspects of themselves while living. I've certainly tried. I've been blocked, but it would be really interesting if I could meet up with another aspect of myself, just to compare notes, just to see how they experience reality, and see if we have a similar experience.
I know it's not the same, but I remember some probably shows or movies that, for example, some person meets with themselves in the past or the future.
Mm-hmm.
It may have some similarities with that. It's like you're talking to yourself in a way, but it's not exactly like you because maybe younger. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but I think we might have some similar feelings, right?
Yeah. And another comment I want to make about, because you were talking about earlier, souls evolve, but on the other hand, when we come into this physical existence, we're heavily influenced by the physical body we're in and the environment that we experience during our life. So, we might be an evolved soul or a young soul, but our physical body is sort of coloring the way that a soul is expressing itself. So, we might be cranky all the time, but that might be like a chemical imbalance within our physical body that's causing that. And so I guess what I'm saying is there's a likelihood that if I met this other person, they might have some similar qualities as me, but they may actually be quite a bit different than me. They may not be interested in math and science. They might be more interested in history or human relations. So it's very possible that my soul is so much bigger than I am, that I'm only just a small expression of what my soul is interested in.
Yeah, and I also think that in some cases, it's also fascinating that I heard that some souls choose to be handicapped to get here. Like they prefer to have big challenges, to maybe be blind, or who knows. But other souls, like for example, I think like you said, I mean, they were born with that talent. Famous people like Bob Marley, Michael Jackson. I mean, they came with that talent. It's kind of like a help,
Yeah. So it's hard to know, like in different cases, is the soul very grandiose, and then when they come into the physical body, they put on a whole production, or were they put into a very, very motivated physical body and went to town there? I do think that, at least from reading Michael Newton, that we certainly select at different points. We might select a lifetime where there's more likelihood that we might be, say, in a position of power. For example, we might be born as the son of the king or something like that. And so it really is going to be our opportunity at some point to be the king. And so it's those kinds of opportunities that we can step into. And then there's other opportunities like you described, where you might just be born in an ordinary family, but because your soul has a very strong ability to sort of, charisma and whatnot, they may take on a role of leadership at some point, even with their humble physical beginnings.
Well, for example, in my case, I was born in Argentina,
Mm-hmm.
but since I was a kid, actually I was fascinated by the Apollo missions.
Okay.
I was saying, where are these people? I mean, how did I get to the moon? And also at the same time, they were fictional movies, about some TV series about space and stuff. But then, I mean, knowing that it was real, that we got to the moon, I said, I want to go there. I want to go to that country, whatever. NASA was like, what's that? I want to.
You want to move to America where they're going to the moon?
Then I got here,
Yeah.
It was like a challenge, but.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah. No, so there's definitely, we may have certain, I feel like what our soul gives us besides maybe some knowledge, is it certainly gives us sort of motivations and excitement about certain things. And I think that pushes us into making certain decisions that allow us to fulfill those dreams and wishes. The question is how much, when we come into the next lifetime, are we, do we already have a college education, or we have to start all over again? It seems like we have to start all over again in a lot
That's
of ways.
one of the things that I question this school. Because why do you have to waste many years in learning so many things again, how to work? Also, the time you spend eating while sleeping, well, apparently in non-physical, you don't sleep. So you have those extra hours, like 1/3 of the day. So I mean, extra third of the time.
So our mind, our mind is running at 386 speeds. We have to sleep 1/3 of the time. We got to eat another fraction of the time. We have to spend 20 plus years going to school just to remember everything that we knew from our previous life. Yeah, it does seem kind of inefficient. My theory, and this is, we can certainly talk about, we can make a whole video about this, is that I think some of the AI that we're developing now at some point will be incarnatable, so to speak. In other words, souls will be able to start incarnating within AI. And the benefit there is that they won't have the limitations of having to start from scratch each time, that they literally can just start from a save file and start experiencing things, right? Have like already a huge database of knowledge at their fingertips. And also the possibility of virtual reality. We may be able to start creating virtual reality within this world that we could possibly incarnate in which case we can program everything and we don't have to start from scratch each time. We could basically start you off as an adult if you want.
And another thing is, who knows, maybe aliens go through that. What if you have a very, very long life? I mean, right now we are talking about 80 years average, something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And what if you suddenly have 1,000 years? It's not the same.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, certainly variations in lifetime, variation in the conditions of the life. I mean, how much leisure is there versus how much work? The joke would be if you could live 1,000 years, then you're not going to be able to collect Social Security until you're 900 years old. So that means you're going to have to be working quite a while. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting questions, but but yeah, the question for us right now is this particular system, is this optimal? Is this a work in progress? I mean, those are interesting questions.
Another thing to notice is that in the last 50 years, so many changes. But if you go over the 50 years ago, there wasn't as many changes as now. So for example, reincarnating from the 1200 to the 1300, it wasn't a big change. Mm-hmm. It was going to be a life that was going to be some kind of similar. But now, if you reincarnate, let's say, 100 years from today, mm-hmm. the changes might be very dramatic. I mean, who knows what will happen in 100 years?
Yeah, well, and it's questioning like our ability as humans to adapt to the changing environments. I mean, on the one hand, we could survive out in the wilderness, a few hundred years ago, and now, we can barely survive in this world, even though everything is provided to us. So yeah, I mean, the pace of things, the skill sets that are needed to survive are evolving and changing. Yeah, things are moving very quickly in this world. And, even for us who are a little bit older, it's almost like this isn't, the joke I like to make to people is that my elementary school prepared me for the 70s. So so education systems, are they really preparing us for the future, or are they looking backwards? So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you want to add something else, or maybe we can start wrapping this up?
Well, we can certainly wrap up this recording right now, and then we could just talk about what we did.
Yeah. Okay. Have a good one.
Take care.